Okay, let's try to fix this board issue. Is the board on upside down?
No, sir.
Right. So
It is reverse.
okay, sorry. While I was talking, I think we were on mute. So let me repeat that again. So we are going to start with a new topic, which is known as SLFRS 9. This topic becomes very important in terms of your examination, especially in the case of question number 1. And also maybe there could be a few more questions on this topic. Then beyond that, this is going to be very important for somebody who is going to remain in the banking industry, because the banking industry is going to evolve around this topic, because there are a lot of implications arising out of this topic. So we may have to understand this not only from an exam perspective, but also for our day-to-day business wise as well. So let us first try to understand this, the background, and then we'll go on to the definitions and so on. Right. So now we have understood the SOFP, Statement of Financial Position, or what you call it as the balance sheet. And we know the balance sheet has 3 components: assets, the liabilities, and the equity. So equity, we already know capital is there. Then you have the profit. So profit is made up of your income and expense. Then you also have reserves. So reserves means any other reserve that you may create using your profits or maybe from any other source. So this includes, as I told you, the foreign currency translation reserve, which we learned under LKS 21. And then we also have revaluation reserve, which is created under LKS 16. And there could be few other reserves also. Now we will learn, stemming from SLFRS 9, we will learn something called OCI reserve, or fair value reserve. You may call it by both names. So OCI reserve is other comprehensive income. So as I told you, when you look at your P&L, there is a component which is your profit or loss, and there will be an element which is coming through the other comprehensive income. So basically, all these are through other comprehensive income that you are going to create. And there could be special reserves which you might create based on the profit. For example, you have the SRR, Statutory Reserve Fund. Statutory Reserve Fund. Okay. Then you might also have general reserves. Those are created using your profits that we will learn when we do question number 1. But basically, under assets and liabilities, you have cash, your bank balances, you might have your debtors. Now this is I am talking about from a common perspective, right? You have stocks. Then on the liabilities, you might have payables, that is your creditors, taxes payable, and there could be so many. Now let us relate this to the bank. So bank, you might not have debtors, you might have loans. that are to be payable by your customers, right? Banks will not have stocks generally. And when it comes to liabilities, you will also have payables, but also most importantly, you will have deposits. Okay, from a bank's perspective. Now, what are we trying to talk about here is, apart from these assets, liabilities that we are talking about, apart from these assets and liabilities that we are talking about, there will be other components which are going to lie in your balance sheet under assets and liabilities. Say, for example, you might have investments. Okay, so we will have investments, and sometimes we might have borrowings on the liability side. Okay, now when these come into the financial statements, these investments and borrowings, there is a special kind of a classification. So like now you have cash, bank, loans, likewise. These are also need to be classified in a specific manner, right? And those have special names as well. So that is what we are trying to learn under SLFRS 9. That is what we are trying to understand and learn under SLFRS 9. Within that, there is another component. I hope the board is now clear, is it?
Board is clear, sir.
Right. So, when it comes to these investments and borrowings, there will be special names given for classification purposes. And based on these classifications, the impact or the accounting treatment for those will also differ. So that is what we are trying to learn today. And sorry. Moving from there onwards, we are going into an important topic which is known as the impairment. So the impairment topic will be the very crucial topic in this, because that is what I meant by saying the banking sector is undergoing a tough time because of this impairment. Now, if you look at currently, the current scenario, consequent to the COVID impact of COVID-19, the banks are facing a lot of difficulties in arriving at these numbers. Okay, so I don't think that in your examination you will be tested to that extent, but by looking at the questions that have come so far, you will also need to know a certain level of understanding of this topic. Okay, so let's try to learn this and understand as far as possible, so that it will be useful for your examination as well as for your future career in the bank because this topic is going to be very, very important. Okay, right. So let's now move on with the topic. So the topic is financial instruments. Financial instrument. That is what we are talking about. So first of all, let's look at the relevant accounting standards and how this has evolved. So if I am to start with just a brief history, up until 2011, up until December 2011, the companies in Sri Lanka were using, which is known as SLAS, Sri Lanka Accounting Standards by then. Because prior to the introduction of these new accounting standards, all financial statements were prepared based on SLAS. We call it as SLAS at that time. That is up until December 2011. In 2011, actually it started somewhere in 2010, but got implemented with effect from 2012. So from 2012, the Institute of Chartered Institute of Accountants, which is known as CA Sri Lanka, introduced a new set of accounting standards which converted the entire financial statement preparation into a new area. So with that only, the good old concept of balance sheet, P&L, everything got converted into what we look at today as statement of financial position, statement of comprehensive income. All those names even were given with that change. So the change happened way back in 2012 with effect from 1st of January 2012. So at that time, what happened? That is what we just need to know. This is just history, but what we will be requiring is what we are going to learn in the future. So in 2012, all the companies in Sri Lanka were required to adopt these three standards. What you see on screen, these three standards were required to be adopted. What are those three? LKS 32, which is on financial instruments, and it was named as presentation. Then we also had LKS 39, which is known as financial instruments, recognition and measurement. So you see, all this time we have been learning standards which covered only one topic, But because of this complication or complexity of this topic, the financial instruments, they had two separate standards covering two aspects of this. One standard to cover how it should be presented. Another standard to cover how you recognize and measure. Measure means subsequent measure. Now, when you look at LKS 16 or LKS 40, whatever, you had to go through this. There was presentation, there was recognition, and there was measurement. And then finally, you need to have the disclosures also. So those standards had all these in one particular standard. But when it comes to financial instruments, because of the complexity and the nature of the product or the topic, they had three separate standards to cover three separate areas, but leading on to the same topic of financial instruments. Now, all companies were adopting this and they were using this for a period of maybe 2012 to 2017, yes, or for a period of 5 years. Sri Lanka was using about for 5 years up until 2018. 2018, we were using these standards. But in 2018, the CA Sri Lanka once again reviewed all these. That is, it started somewhere in 2015-16, but ultimately it got implemented with effect from 2018. So what happened? There were certain deficiencies in the current standards of 32 and 39. LKS 32 and 39, there were certain malpractices or maybe deficiencies, all those were there. So in order to fix those and to adopt the global practices, because you have to remember, as I explained to you, all these standards have come from the Global International Accounting Standards Board. So here we say LKS 32, but they say IAS 32. Here we say LKS 39, they say IAS 39. Here we call it as SLFRS 7, they call it as IFRS 7. That is the difference. So we adopt almost all of the contents of the standard, the International Accounting Standard, and slightly changing it according to the Sri Lankan context. Okay, that is what we do. So what happened with this LKS 32 and 39 is there were certain deficiencies, and the CA Sri Lanka decided to bring in the new standard, which was implemented and introduced and implemented by the global countries. So which was known as IFRS 9. IFRS 9. And that is what got converted into SLFRS 9 in Sri Lanka. SLFRS 9 in Sri Lanka. So you have to understand that the implications or complexities that were there in LKS 32 and 39 got converted into all SLFRS 9. So in other words, we can say that the LKS 32 and 39 is, I would not say totally replaced, but almost replaced by SLFRS 9. So now we don't go and learn LKS 32 and 39. Thank God we are not going to go and learn those two. But SLFRS 7 still remains because that is on disclosures that continues. So SLFRS 7 and SLFRS 9 is the one which is now currently effective, which is from 1/1/2018. 1/1/2018. So under this new standard also, now companies in Sri Lanka have almost completed 3 financial years. 3 financial years. So we have to be mindful about it. 2018, 19 and 20. So 31st December companies almost completed 3 years, and March 31st companies are going to complete it maybe in a 2-3 days time. They are also going to complete the 3rd year. Okay. So now if you look at the financial statements prepared by companies in Sri Lanka are based on SLFRS 9. SLFRS 9. So that is what you see. Even what I have shared with you under LKS 1, I shared with you 2 financial statements. All those are based on SLFRS 9. SLFRS 9. Right. Now let's get on to the topic. Now the topic financial instrument relates to the 3 components that we learned: financial asset, financial liabilities, and equity. So if you look at a balance sheet, you have assets, liabilities, and equity. So what we are going to learn here today, the financial instruments also can take these 3 forms. It could be a financial asset, we call it as a financial asset, or it could be a financial liability, or it could be equity. When we say equity here, we are talking about capital. Please remember, the component that we are talking about here as equity is specially referring to the capital. Okay, but you know, when generally we talk about equity, it also has profits and other reserves as well, right? So what is a financial instrument? A financial instrument is any contract. A financial instrument is any contract that gives rise to a financial asset of one entity and a financial liability or equity instrument of another entity. Now, this is a theoretical definition. You have to remember, unfortunately, because you can't write it in your own words. This is the simplest form of writing it in your own words. You can't change it. So a financial instrument is any contract. That is the most important part of this definition. It's a contract now. So this contract will give rise to a financial asset of one entity. One entity. So this one entity means, it doesn't mean always a company. It could be an individual also. It could be a partnership also. It could be a sole proprietorship also. So in generic terms, we say entity. So a financial instrument is any contract that gives rise to a financial asset of one entity and a financial liability or equity instrument of another entity. Right? So this is the theoretical definition. Okay. Now let's try to understand this first and then move forward. Otherwise, it will be very complicating to us. What are we trying to understand here? For simplicity, I will take two companies. Company A and Company B. Company A and Company B. Now, Company A, let's say, have money. Have money. Company B needs money. Just for an example, I'm saying, it need not be always the same case, but just for example, let's say a scenario where Company A have money, adequate money, and Company B needs money. So, if Company B needs money, what is the option available to them? They can easily go to a bank and ask for a loan. They can go to a bank and easily ask for a loan. That is one option. That is one option. Or they can issue new shares. They can issue new shares to the market so that these people will go and buy it. Okay, that is another option. Another option is where you can issue a debt instrument, or we call that, let's say for example, debentures. So I told you that when a company needs money, we learned it under financial ratios also. I was explaining you when we were doing the gearing ratio. When they need money, what they do, they can go out to the market and borrow. So when you want to borrow, your capital strength and your credit worthiness have to be there. Otherwise, people won't lend you. Similar, when people come to a bank asking for a loan, the loan bank will do a credit evaluation. Based on the credit evaluation only, you will give the loan. You will not just give for somebody who is not even in a position to repay, right? So these three options are available for them to raise money. So when they look at these opportunities, sometimes they might go into the loan option. Sometimes they might go to the shares option. Sometimes they might go to this option. Okay, right. Now let's look at this company choosing the option of shares. Okay, So shares means what is it for this company? It's equity. It is equity. Okay, it is equity. So now what is going to happen is when they come to the market with the intention of raising money, they are putting out shares. They are putting out shares. So what these people will do? Now let's say this company is a good company, company B. Unfortunately, they now require this cash or capital for some expansion. So they know company A knows about company B and they want to invest in this. Invest in this. So their board of directors decide to invest. Please try to understand this conceptually, otherwise very difficult. Now the board of directors of company A decides to invest. No, may not be the full amount, but partly. Let's say. So when you invest, what is going to happen? There is going to be a contract. There is going to be a contract. What is the contract? I will give you money you have to give me shares. This is the contract. I will give you money, that is company A will give money to company B and company B will give in return their company shares. Their company shares. So what will happen? They get the required cash, they get the investment. So they get the partly the ownership. So they become shareholders of this company. Shareholders of this company. Now this is the arrangement. This is the arrangement. Now what do we need to understand here is because of this contract, we get a financial instrument created. Financial instrument created. And what is that financial instrument here? It is the shares. It is the shares. But look at how it is going to impact the financial statements of company A and company B. Right? So, what do we say here? Financial instrument is any contract. That gives rise to a financial asset of one entity, which means I'm going to make an investment. So what is happening to company A? Company A is getting an investment because they initially had a cash, which was their asset. Now they gave up that asset and they are taking a new asset. That new asset is a financial instrument. The new asset is a financial instrument. So what are they ultimately doing? They are taking a new financial asset. So initially they had cash. They gave that cash and they brought in a financial asset. Okay. By giving this financial asset and agreeing to a contract, what did happen to company B? They ended up creating equity. They ended up creating an equity in their balance sheet. So now look at the definition. Now look at the definition. What does it say? A financial instrument is any contract that gives rise to a financial asset in one entity and a financial liability or equity. So now what we are looking at is the equity part. Financial liability is also there. That is in the case of a debenture, like debt instrument. I explained to you, when you issue a debenture, you have to repay it some time back after. So that is the financial liability. Now we are looking at the equity part because this is the most common. So what are you doing? By creating this contract, a financial instrument is created, which is a financial asset of one entity and the equity or financial liability of another entity. Please remember, the meaning of entity does not mean always a company. It need not be a company. It could be an individual or entity. Okay. So I hope the definition of financial instrument is understood. Please take down what is there on the board. Okay. So this definition has to be remembered, right? You have to remember. Then I'm going to slightly change this. Again, the same contract. Now what happens sometimes, it will be very costly for a company to always issue shares, because issuing shares has a lot of formalities, regularities that you have to meet, and that could be costly. That could be costly. So what they can do is they can easily go and issue debentures. So debenture is also like a fixed deposit, right? So if this company wants to invest in debenture, it's like a fixed deposit. Instead of putting it in a fixed deposit, I will go and put it in the debentures. But what happens even in the case of fixed deposit, when you take a fixed deposit, sometime after 5 years or 2 years, you have to pay. But debentures also are similar to that. You have to pay to the borrower, or sorry, the investor, together with interest after a period of 5 years. Generally, debentures are issued for 5 years. Okay. Now what happens? Again, the same theory. There is a contract. Company A is going to give money and company B is going to give, which is called a debenture. And it is a contract. Because of this contract, there is a financial instrument created. What is the financial instrument? That is the debenture, which we call it as a debt instrument, which is called as a debt instrument. Earlier example, it is an equity instrument. Now it is a debt instrument, right? We call it as a debt instrument. DEBT, debt instrument. because I'll be using this term hereinafter, so you have to remember what is debt instrument. It could be a debenture, it could be a commercial paper, it could be a trust certificate. There are a lot of debt instrument. So now what is going to happen? There is a contract created. There is a financial instrument now. Look at the definition now. A financial instrument is a contract which gives rise to a financial asset of one entity, and now there it is going to be slightly different. This debenture is not an equity instrument, but it is a financial liability. You see how the definition is made up of? The definition relates to two items. One is it is going to be a financial asset of one entity. That is fine. But depending on the type of instrument, it could be an equity of another entity, or it could be a financial liability of another entity. It could be a financial liability of another entity. So what is the end result? Now if you look at the definition as a whole, the financial instrument is any contract that gives rise to a financial asset of one entity and a financial liability or equity of another entity. I think this is now very much easy for you to remember. If the exam question asks you to define or explain what is a financial instrument is, you can simply say it's a contract. It's a contract. It's a contract between two parties or two entities which gives rise to a financial asset of one entity and a financial liability or equity to another entity. So depending on the type of the instrument, you have to decide whether this is a financial liability or equity. Okay, so I would like you to take down this also for understanding. Okay, right. So now let's go back to the presentation. So this is what financial instrument is. Now let's look at what is financial asset. This definition is also very important. What do they say? Financial asset is any asset. So now you have to recall company A, what did they do? They gave up cash and they took up an instrument. The instrument was a share in the first instance. The second instance, it was a debenture as a debt instrument. So what do they say as a financial asset? Financial asset, that is cash. So yes, I gave up my cash and brought in something which is also like cash, because I can get rid of that at any point in time. If you want, you can sell the shares. If you want, you can sell the debentures and make or bring back the money that you want. Okay. So, and any asset that is cash or an equity instrument of another entity that I have already explained to you, which is a share. Thirdly, this is where the debt instrument comes in. It becomes a contractual right. It becomes a contractual right to receive cash or another financial asset from another entity, or to exchange financial instruments with another entity under conditions that are potentially favorable. Now, the third part, if you really look at it, when you go and invest in a debenture, unless it is a tradable debenture, if it is not a tradable debenture, what will happen is you will have a contractual right to receive cash in a future time period. Or they can also say, now look, I can't give you money. Let us give you another financial asset. That also is possible. So if you look at the definition from the financial instrument definition perspective, by somebody taking in a financial instrument, if it is a financial asset to them, it could be a cash, it could be an equity instrument of another entity, or it could be a contractual right to receive cash or another financial asset from another entity, or to exchange financial instruments with another entity under conditions that are potentially favorable. What do you mean by that? Now, let's say you have purchased a debenture which is on a tradable debenture. In the stock market, it is getting traded. Now, you might want to sell this debenture due to some requirement. But when will you sell it mostly? If you are not in a critical position, you might want to sell it when the conditions are potentially favorable. So, for example, if you say you have shares, now when do you want to sell these shares? When the share prices are at a good level. When the prices are very low, you will not sell it because you might enter into a loss. So I would like to sell my shares or debentures when the conditions are potentially favorable. Potentially favorable. Now, when you look at the definition for financial liability, it is the right opposite of this. Look at that. It's a contractual obligation. Now, when you say liability, liability is always an obligation, right? We already learned what is the definition of assets, liabilities, and equity. So it is the same thing that we are trying to expand it by putting in the term financial. Otherwise, it is the same thing. So what do you mean by financial liabilities? It's a contractual obligation. I told you, when you issue share debentures, there is a liability. But when you issue shares, it's an equity. So what is this liability means? To deliver cash or another financial asset. You see, when you issue debentures after a period of 5 years, what do you need to do? You need to pay them back. You need to pay them back with the money that you have borrowed. Or you can exchange financial instruments with another entity under conditions that are potentially unfavorable. Now, it could be a situation where you will have to exchange with them, but the conditions are not favorable to you. Now, the person who is having the financial asset will do it when it is potentially favorable. But somebody having a financial liability might be forced to do it when it is potentially unfavorable to them. There is no other option. It's only you have to exchange the financial instrument. Okay. So the financial asset and the financial liability definitions are stemming from the original definition of a financial instrument. There is not much in deviation. And equity is very straightforward. As you learn, any contract that evidences a residual interest in the assets of an enterprise after deducting all of its liability. So this is the same old definition that you learned for equity, because equity is the difference between asset and liability. So here we bring in an additional word to say that it's any contract that evidences a residual interest. Residual interest means there is a difference. If not, there is no equity. No. If the assets and liabilities are equal, there is no equity. So anyway, there has to be a residual. So asset minus liability has to be greater than 0 for you to be having an equity interest. Right? So that is the fundamental definitions in terms of what you understand as a financial instrument, a financial asset, and a financial liability. Those are the three main important topics under this financial instrument. Right? Okay. Now look at the changes that have taken place. What are the changes that have taken place during this time? Okay. Now, if you really look at the first slide that I explained, there was something known as classification and recognition and measurement. Recognition and measurement, and LKS 32 related to the presentation. Now, presentation means actually it had a classification. That is what it means as presentation. Now, I told you the LKS 32 and 39 are more or less now replaced by SLFRS 9. So, one of the biggest changes that happened when we moved from LKS 32, 39 to the SLFRS 9 is the classification and measurement. What is the change? Now, the classification and measurement happens based on two important criteria, which is known as the business model and contractual cash flows. Contractual cash flows. I'll come into the specific terms one by one, but you need to know what are the principal changes. Then the second part of this topic is, as I told you, the impairment. So the impairment, originally it was based on incurred loss. I will explain it to you when we are looking at impairment, but we will not go into detail, but I will just summarize it and tell you what is incurred loss is. But what we are using now under SLFRS 9 is expected loss. These terms you have to remember: incurred loss, expected loss, all these will come in your examination. Then the third one, where the SLFRS 9 required you to specifically account for something called hedge accounting. So hedge accounting is not in detail in your subject module, but just to know what is there. So when you are entering into transactions, sometimes there are risks. So how you will manage those risks? How you will manage those risks? That is what hedge accounting does. Hedge accounting. So basically, we will be looking at classification and measurement and impairment. Not in detail of hedge accounting, because hedge accounting is not relevant to you all. Okay. Right. Now we go to the overview of classification and measurement requirements. So now, as I told you, now we have a financial asset with us. We have a financial asset with us, right? Similarly, we will have financial liabilities also, because depending on the situation, it could be anything to you. It could be a financial asset, or it could be a financial liability, or an equity instrument. Okay. But how do we manage with these three items? How do we classify them? These are the classifications. Now only we are coming into the complex areas of this topic, right? Because you need to remember these names. SLFRS 9 classifies financial assets. First, we are going to look at financial assets. The financial assets into three main measurement categories. We are going to measure them under three important categories. What are those? First one, we call it as the amortized cost. The amortized cost. Okay. Second one, it is known as fair value through other comprehensive income. Fair value through other comprehensive income. And the third one, fair value through profit or loss. Fair value through profit or loss. So in examination, we can use this abbreviation. Amortized cost means AC. FVOCI means fair value through other comprehensive income. FVTPL means fair value through PNL. Right? So I'm going to ask you an important question. Did you all come across these terms anywhere? Did you all come across these terms anywhere? What would you say?
No, sir.
No. That's too bad. You have already come across these. Let me show you where you came across. Okay, look at this. I showed you two financial statements of two banks. So I'm just referring one. So we had the income statement. We had the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. And then we had the statement of financial position. Statement of financial position. So let me enlarge this a bit. How much? Right, let's look at this. Now, if you really look at the statement of financial position, I hope everybody can see this. Now look at the financial, in other words, the assets of this bank. So you have cash and cash equivalent, balances with central bank, placements with banks, securities purchase under resale agreement, derivative financial assets. Look at the next one. Financial assets recognized through profit or loss. Did you see that? Financial assets recognized through profit or loss. This is what is there in the slide. Fair value through PNL. Fair value through PNL means financial assets recognized through profit or loss measured at fair value. You see, It is there. The next one. So I'll leave this. This is also same thing, but look at this. Financial assets at amortized cost. You see? Financial assets at amortized cost. That is the first one, first bullet point that you saw. First bullet point. Let me go back to that first. You see? Amortized cost. The first one we saw is this, fair value through profit or loss. Now the second one is amortized cost. Look at next. I will leave this, that is also amortized cost, but look at this. Financial assets measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. Other comprehensive income. That is the second one here. Fair value through other comprehensive income. You see? So basically, the financial assets that we are looking at can be classified into three categories. What are the three categories? Namely, amortized cost, fair value through other comprehensive income, and fair value through profit or loss. Is that clear to you all? Let's look at one by one what these are, but the classification of financial assets go into three categories. These are apart from your cash, balances with banks, central bank reserve, fixed assets, all those are separate. This is something totally relating to the financial instruments or the financial assets. Financial assets. Now, the second part what we need to know is, how do I classify these into these three categories? That is amortized cost or fair value through P&L or fair value through other comprehensive income. How do I decide what to be put where? So in order to determine that, the CA Sri Lanka provides you some guidance. What is it that they want to use? They want to use these two criteria, which is the business model test and the cash flow characteristic test. We call these two tests. First one is the business model test. Second one, the cash flow characteristic test. Cash flow characteristic test. Right? Okay. So let's first look at the board and then I will explain it. Okay. Now let's take a financial asset. Now this financial asset, you know, can take three forms, right? It could be amortized cost. It could be fair value through P&L, or it could be fair value through OCA. Okay. take three forms. Which form it takes depends on two criteria. What are the two? The business model test and the cash flow characteristic. So there are two tests. When you perform these two tests, you decide whether this financial asset is here, here, or here. Right? That is what we are trying to understand here. Okay? Right. Now, what are these means? Cash flow characteristic test. Pattern this is very important. Now, let us try to understand this. When you go and invest, or when you go and put money in a fixed deposit in a bank, okay, let's say I'm going to invest 100,000 rupees in a bank for 12 months at the rate of, let's say, 10%. Just an example. I'm going to invest 100,000 for 12 months at 10%. So you go and give the bank 100,000. What do you get in return? What will you get after the 12 months period is over? I need an answer from somebody.
Interest with capital?
Okay, interest with capital. So what is your capital?
100,000.
100,000 is capital. Very good. And then what you get?
Plus interest.
Plus interest. How much?
20,000.
How much?
20,000.
No. You are investing 100,000. 12 months. This is per annum rate.
10,000.
10,000. Come on. So you have 100,000 capital, but I appreciate your answer that you get capital and interest. Okay. So 100,000 capital at 10% for 12 months. I refer 12 months means 1 year. So for 1 year means 100,000 into 10%, you get 10,000 interest. Now the question is, why did you say like that? So I wanted you all to speak now because it will be very difficult for me to explain this. Otherwise, if you don't understand it. So I would like you to speak out, whoever it is. Just unmute yourself and speak, and then without interrupting others, you can go to unmute again. So you decided that you will get capital and interest. Why is that?
After the investment, sir,
Yes.
as a fixed deposit, we get as return capital with interest. No, that's right.
Yeah. So because there was a contract. Can you remember?
Yeah.
When you go and deposit money, there is a contract, right? You fill in a form, and the bank will give you a fixed deposit certificate. So those are the evidences of the contract that you have. Now this contract is giving you, now please try to relate whatever that I am saying now to the definition of financial asset and financial instrument, both. So what are you getting? You are getting the right to receive cash. Do you understand that? And what type of cash that you are going to receive? You came and said that I'm going to get this capital that I invested, and I'm going to get some interest based on my investment. So we understand that when there is a financial asset, there is a possibility of getting capital plus interest. Capital plus interest. This is what known as cash flow. Do you understand that? You are getting capital and interest from your or on your financial asset. This is your financial asset. So on this financial asset, when I gave money as an investment, I am supposed to get capital plus interest, which is my cash flow. This is my cash flow. And I call this with a special name, which is contractual cash flow. Contractual, because there is a contract. There is a contractual cash flow. Okay, contractual cash flow. Have you all understood to that extent? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, this becomes one of the tests, first tests that you perform, whether the financial asset going into one of these. The requirement here is we need to understand whether I get capital and interest only. Capital and interest only. Sometimes what happens in certain instrument, you might also get some commission. You might also get some commission or some other fee, some added benefit. Okay? Not only capital plus interest, but you get something else also. No. The standard clearly says, if it is capital and interest only, if it is capital and interest only, which is given a special name, solely payment of principal and interest. I hope it is visible. Solely payment of principal and interest, which means you are getting a payment which is going to be only the capital and the interest. Capital, another name for capital is principal. Okay, do you understand that? I make an investment. I'm not relating to this. It could be any investment. I'm making an investment. From that investment, I'm going to get back capital and interest only, or principal and interest only. This is known as SPPI test. Solely payment PI. SPPI. SPPI. Solely payment of principal and interest. So the name given for the cash flow characteristic test is SPPI test. Why I am taking such a long time to explain this is because this is going to be the way forward. And these terms will be directly tested in your question paper. So you need to know, right? One of the tests is business model test. Second test is SPPI test. You can straight away write this in your examination. There is no issue. These are standard names. SPPI test means the cash flow characteristic test. Because there is no other name for SPPI. SPPI means it is this. So, I said, in order to decide this financial asset, where will it fit in, the first test I need to do is SPPI test. SPPI test. Okay. If the SPPI test is depending on the successful or being unsuccessful of the SPPI test only, I go into the business model test. I go into the business model test. Business model test. Is that clear up to that point? I hope everybody is clear with that. What is SPPI test is? That is, if I go and make an investment, I need to get only principal and interest. Let me term this as principal rather than saying capital. I'll name this as principal so that it will be clear to you. So from the investment, which is the financial asset, now I need to find out whether based on the SPPI test, is it only principal and interest? If it is principal and interest only, I will go forward with the approach where I will go to the business model test. Business model test. So I would like you all to take this down. Just as an example, you take this down. Okay, right. So now, going back to the same example, let's say I invest this on 1st of January 2021. So obviously this is available for me for withdrawal on 31st December 2021. Because 12 months. Is that clear? Right. Now, during this period, I have the option of either to wait till the year end to get this principal and interest, which is the 100,000 and the 10,000. Okay, I have the option to wait till the December 31, 2021 to get this 110,000. That is called hold to collect. We say that hold to collect. Why I say hold to collect is because I'm not going to do anything. I'm just keeping my certificate with me, expecting that after this period is over, I will go and collect it from the bank. So I am holding it to collect. That is one option. The second option is where at this point in time you decide I'm going to hold it to collect. But in between what happens, sometimes you also decide by about 15th of October, you decide, no, I can't be waiting till that time long. I need to go and take this out. So in banking terms, you call it as early redemption. Isn't it? You all call it as early redemption. So customer has the option. Customer can come and redeem it at this time. But what happens? You will not give them the 10,000 that you agree. You will give it at a discounted rate. So 100,000 will be given back, but not the 10,000. You will give a lesser amount. But that is an option given to the customer. That is an option given to the customer. Right? But this is something specific to the fixed deposit. But when you go to the financial assets that you are talking about here, has the option not only to hold to collect, but also hold to collect and sell them. And sell them. Something like this. I go and buy shares in the stock market. I go and buy shares in the stock market. So which is a financial asset to me. Now look at this financial asset. I can keep it with me for any long. Or what I can do is I can also go and sell it to somebody else. Somebody else. So here we are talking about two things. Any instrument that has the option hold to collect is also possible. Or there could be instruments which can be where you can hold to collect and you can sell them also. You can sell them also. Okay. So the concept here is, now we have understood what is the cash flow characteristic test. Now under the business model test, you are given two options. What are the two options? One is where you can hold to collect. I am waiting till the end to collect this principal and interest. That is one option. The second option given under business model test is where I have the intention of hold to collect also and also to sell it. Also to sell it. That is the second type of business model option available to you. So here it has to be principal and interest only because SPPI test. Here you have two options. One is where you can hold to collect. You can wait till maturity comes and you go and collect it. Or I have the intention of collecting it at the end, but with an option in between I go and sell it. In between I go and sell it. So those are the two important changes that happened from the previous standard, LKS 32 and 39, with regard to the classification and measurement. This is one of the important changes that took place. Why? Earlier there was a different criteria. We don't need to go back to that because that's why I told you. Any question paper, if you look at even including March 2018, I think, yeah. From September 2018 only, I think you can have this. Prior to that, all under the LKS 32 and 39. So when you are doing past papers, sometimes when you go and look at question number 1, under prior to September 2018, you would see those are not this classification. Those are totally different. So I don't want to go back to that and confuse you all because there is no more. So what you need to know is the classification is only 3. And how do you classify this? Based on two criteria. One is the SPPI test, the other one is the business model test. That's all. If you know that, that is fine. Don't go and try to learn what is or what was there prior to 1st of December 2018. Sorry, 1st of January 2018. No, that is not important. So what you need to know today is this. Okay? Right. So let's go back to the presentation now. I think somebody is still unmute. Could you please mute yourself, please? So before coming into this slide, I will go to this specific slide, right? This one, right? So please note this. How do we decide on whether a financial asset is fair value through P&L or amortized cost or fair value through OCI? There is a step-by-step approach. Okay. So first criteria, you check whether there are cash flows which confines to SPPI, which means whether it is solely payment of principal and interest. If it is not solely payment of principal and interest, straight away you can classify it as fair value through P&L. You see? So what goes into fair value through P&L is all that does not confine to the condition of SPPI. If you fail the SPPI test, straight away put that financial asset into fair value through P&L without any worry. Is that clear? Right. Now it is not, SPPI is not failed. It is through, which means you are getting solely payment of principal and interest. You come down. And now you go and check what is your business model? What is your business model? And if your business model is hold to collect only, you put it under amortized cost. You put it under amortized cost. If you fail, you put it under, if you fail there, you go and check whether the business model is hold to collect and sell. Hold to collect and sell. If that is the scenario, you put it under fair value through OCI. Fair value through OCI. If you fail there, again, you have to put those items into fair value through P&L. Fair value through P&L. Okay. So this is very important. This is very important. Now I'll explain this on the board because by looking at the diagram, you might be confused. Okay. Now look at the board. So now I am giving you two instruments. One is a share, the other one is a debenture. Right? Both are investments. So both are investment. Please follow this, very important. Now, if I go and invest in a share, let's say 100,000. If I go and invest in a debenture, the same 100,000. What is the difference? What is the difference?
Debentures are liability, shares are assets, sir.
Very good. Sorry, it is a equity.
Sorry, sir. It's a equity. Shares are equity.
This is equity. This is liability. Very good. Right? So this is to the other party, yeah? This is to the other party. Now I am looking, if I am the company which is going and investing in these two, for me, both are financial assets. Both are financial assets. Right. Now, if you go and invest in a share, what do you get?
Dividend.
We get only dividend. We get only dividend. If you go and invest in a debenture, what do you get? You get interest. Because debenture is somewhat similar to like a fixed deposit. Right? Now it's a liability to the company who is issuing. But if I am going to invest in that, it's like the fixed deposit. For me, it's like the fixed deposit. Only thing is, it is for a longer period, 5 years. 100,000 at 13% for 5 years. This is what the contract is. So what do I get here after 5 years is this capital plus interest, or the principal plus interest. Okay, two instruments. Now let us go to the flow diagram that I showed you. Right? Now look at the two instruments in conjunction with the flow diagram that you have. What is the first thing that we need to do? Perform the SPPI test. SPPI test. What do I get here? I get the principal plus, what do I get? Dividend. Here I get principal plus interest. So what happens? If you look at the SPPI test for this, fail. Why? It is not solely principal and interest. There is something coming else. Something else is coming, not interest. So SPPI test is failed. But look at debenture or a debt instrument. There is principal, there is interest, and it is only that. We don't get commission or anything on this. So SPPI test is through. SPPI test is through. Now, if you look at the diagram, I told you straight away, if this fails on SPPI test, I will put the shares into fair value through P&L. Do you get that? If I fail the SPPI test, straight away I put it to the fair value through P&L category. Fair value through P&L category. Okay? So that's the end of it. I classify it under fair value through P&L. But this one, if I get through the SPPI test, I have a problem with me now. Why? I need to perform the business model test. Business model test. So what is the business model test? One is hold to collect. The other one is hold to collect and sell. Hold to collect and sell. So once the SPPI test is through, I need to go and check both these. Whether I am hold to collect or hold to collect and sell. Hold to collect and sell. If I am through with hold to collect, I will put this under amortized cost. If I am through with hold to collect, I will put it under amortized cost. If it is not, if it is not, if it is not, it is not, then I will check whether it is hold to collect and sell. So whether you are thinking, I will hold it and I will sell it also. I will hold it not for a 5-year period, but I will hold it for 3 years and then I will sell it. If your plan is hold to collect and sell, yes, you will put it under fair value through OCI. Fair value through OCI. Right? This is when you say yes. If you say no, then again you have to put it under fair value through P&L. Fair value through P&L. So you will see, when it was shares, it was very straightforward. Put it under fair value through P&L. But when it is something else, you come through and you perform a business model test and you see whether it is hold to collect. If it is hold to collect, I put it under amortized cost. If not, I will come to see whether it is hold to collect and sell. If you say yes, I will put it under fair value through OCI. If you say no, I will put it under fair value through. Okay? So I would appreciate if you can take down this, because this will help you to understand better. Okay? So here also there are further implications. I am not going into detail because that will complicate more. So for the time being, this is what our understanding is. Okay? Right. Let's go back to the presentation. So now you will see the 3 categories: fair value through P&L, fair value through OCI, and amortized cost. So fair value through P&L is applies to other financial assets that do not meet the conditions for amortized cost or fair value through OCI. So what you put into the fair value through P&L is basically whatever that are not meeting the other 2 criterias. You will straight away go and put it under fair value through P&L. But what does mean by amortized cost is applies to debt assets for which contractual cash flows are solely principal and interest, and business model is hold to collect, as I explained you. What goes into fair value through OCI is applies to debt assets for which contractual cash flows are solely principal and interest. Yes, but the business model is hold to collect and hold to collect cash and cell. Okay. So based on that, the business model test has two types. One is hold to collect and the other one is hold to collect and sell. These are very, very important because in exams, they have already tested what are the two business models available for classification of financial assets and liabilities. Okay. Then these are some examples which you have to remember. When you say amortized cost, now we have learned so many things on this. What is that you can think of from a bank which can be put under amortized cost? What is it that you can put under amortized cost from a bank? What are the financial assets that you can put it under amortized cost? The loans given to customers. The loans given to customers. Why? Now, when you give a loan, what do you agree? You give a 5-year loan. You give a 5-year loan at 10% or whatever the rate. And you tell the customer, look, you have to pay me monthly an installment. Or you can say annually an installment. Now, what does this installment will have? Principal and interest. Principal and interest. Okay. So it's very clear. When you take a loan contract, in a loan contract, you have the principal and interest that is there. The complication comes when you collect commission and that, and this is where it is going to complicate. But if you simply say, if it is principal and interest in your loan, yes, then we can think whether it could be under amortized cost. What is the second thing? When you give a loan to a customer, it is like hold to collect. Why? When you say you can pay monthly installment over the next 5 years means you have to wait till the customer comes and pays you. You can't call the customer and tell him, look, I need money, so you come and pay the whole amount. No, you can't say like that. So whether you like it or not, it is hold to collect. There is nothing for you to sell. So it is going to be definitely hold to collect. So loans are basically in a bank falls into the category of amortized cost. Falls into the category of amortized cost. But any other financial instrument, such as other than the shares, like you might have sometimes treasury bill investments, debenture investments, or maybe treasury bond investments. All these investments can take all three types. It could go into amortized cost, or it could go into fair value through P&L, or it could go into the fair value through OCI also. Right? Shares generally goes into the fair value through P&L category. Fair value through P&L category. Okay. So you need to be in a position when you look at a trial balance of a company, generally they will classify these. Even in your exams, you don't need to look at how you classify it, because generally it is given to you in the form of the classification. In the form of the classification. I will just try to see whether I can show you something from the question paper. Okay, I will just show you a past paper, which is the September 2019 question. This is question number 1. Right, I hope it is visible. So they have given you a list of balances. List of account balances. See, financial assets at amortized cost. The first item. Then when you go down further, you will see financial assets. This one. Financial assets recognized through profit or loss. Financial assets recognized through profit or loss. So you don't have to worry about the classification per se. Mostly they will give you the classification. So you don't have to worry. That is what I can tell you in terms of your examination, right? As I told you, now here in this accounts prepared by this bank, you straight away have these financial assets at amortized cost, loans and advances. Financial assets at amortized cost, loans and advances to other customers. You see, financial assets at amortized cost, debt and other financial instruments. Then you also have financial assets measured at fair value through other comprehensive income. So by looking at a financial statement, you should be in a position to understand and identify what are the different classifications that they have used. Okay. Right. So please remember the terms that I explained to you, SPPI test or contractual cash flow test. Those are very important. And then this flow diagram also, if you can remember, that would be better, because that will give you a clear understanding of how this step-by-step approach can be taken to classify the assets. So like the financial assets, you have to classify the financial liabilities also. Like the financial assets, you have to classify the financial liabilities as well. So there you get only two categories. No complications. It is very straightforward. Either it has to be amortized cost or fair value through P&L. Fair value through P&L. So there is nothing called fair value through OCI here. Okay. Financial liabilities, you have the amortized cost and the fair value through P&L category. So you know how to categorize amortized cost. It is the same principle. First, you have to see the SPPI test, and then if it is true, it is whether hold to pay is applicable. Okay. So in financial liability, there are a lot of other options available, but we don't need to go into detail. I'm just providing it for you to, for your additional notes purposes. But actually speaking, the financial liabilities, you can go by the definition that the two forms that are given there. Okay, right. So that is all about classification of financial assets. So the next topic that we have is very important, which is on impairment on financial instruments, which I am going to start only on next week. But today, before we wind up, I would like to touch upon a little topic which can lead up to understand better the impairment. Okay. So I want you to thoroughly revise what we learned today when you are ready to go with the next week's lesson. But what I would do is, now I want to look at the board and try to understand this. Okay, right. Now you are a bank. Let's take a simple example and then come to the bank. Okay. Now you are a company. let's say company ABC, you are selling goods. You are selling goods. So you sell goods on two options. One is cash, the other one is credit. This you already know. One is cash, the other one is credit. So when you give it for cash, what is the double entry? Debit cash, credit sales. Your transaction is over because you have received cash. That's the end of it. But when you do a credit sale, what happens? You will debit debtors and credit sales. Okay, these all you know. We don't have to go back and postmortem this. This is already known. So I am giving a customer a sale today, which is to be paid within 45 days. So I'm giving the credit option to the customer for them to come back and pay me within 45 days from today. 45 days from today. So the days goes on. 30 days are gone. 40 days are gone. And 45 days are also gone. Now this customer has not come and paid. This customer has not come and paid. Or in other words, the debtor has not come and paid. Now what is the situation of this company? What is the situation of this company? Let's say you sold 2 million worth of goods. So you sold it to a good customer, known customer, 2 million of worth goods to this customer. So thinking that within 45 days it will come. So with this COVID, that and this customer has not turned to pay it within 45 days. So now 45 days is gone means now there is a little bit of doubt created in the minds of company ABC whether they will get this. Whether they will get this. What happens if they don't get it? What if they don't get it? This 2 million becomes a loss. So we don't need to go to that level initially. Initially what happens? We have a doubt. We have a doubt whether this guy will come and pay me. Maybe not a 45 days, but at least if within 90 days, if he comes and pays me, that's something. That is something. So once you pass this 45 days, now you have some doubts. You have some doubts. So when you start getting these doubts, you have to adjust your financial statement for that particular doubt. Okay, what companies can do is they can make a provision for this. Provision for this. In order to absorb this loss at a later point in time. So what they do, they will debit provision, sorry. You can debit an account called provision for bad, or you can say bad debts account, and credit provision for bad and doubtful debts. So this is your P&L account. This is your balance sheet. Okay. So what happens when this day is passed? You are now a little bit having doubts whether this guy will come and pay me, or at least within 90 days, or maybe in 180 days. I don't know how long you can wait, but the moment you have the doubt created, or when the 45 days is lapsed, you have to start thinking about making a provision. This we call it as bad debt provision. Bad debt provision. Okay, bad debt provision. So this normally, this concept is normally for a trading business. A trading business, this is applicable. Can you take down this? Okay. So in a trading business, this is the scenario, right? So initially you will not make 2 million, but you will put a percentage, let's say 10%. So likewise, you have to start putting it. So when you reach 2 million, still this person, if he has not paid, then the company has to make a call whether this is a loss or not. Whether this is a loss or not. Okay, so when the loss happens, using this provision, you have to reverse these debtors. That debtors is gone because it's a loss to you. It's a loss to you. Okay. Now, why I explained this is that is the leading point to the next topic of impairment. Now, in banks, what happens? Bank also do something similar to this. What do? They give loans to the customers. They give loans to the customers. And these customers are expected to pay monthly installments or biannual installments or annual installments. So that is what the banks do. They give loans and they expect them to pay. But unfortunately, what happens? Some customers doesn't pay. Customers, they don't pay. So when they don't pay, the banks have a problem. Banks have a problem. So when the same thing happens to the bank, where there is a doubtfulness created, the customers doesn't pay for a longer period, but their central bank comes into the play. Because central bank has a control over banks. So they won't just allow these banks to wait till for a longer period till the customer comes and pay. No. There are strict rules for the banks, which I will explain next week. So what does the banks need to do now? Banks has to foresee this issue. Whether my customer will not pay me, whether he will default the next 10 or 15 installments. That can happen. So what the banks will do is, they will start providing similar to this provision. And that provision is what is known as impairment. Okay. So the name given from accounting terminology for the same thing, bad debts provisioning is impairment. But only difference is this is conceptually little bit complicated. That is what the only difference. Here it is very straightforward. Here it is little complex. Okay. So let's learn it next week. What is impairment, how the banks do it, all those. We will learn it in context with SLFRS 9 requirements. SLFRS 9 requirements. Okay. Right. Have a pleasant weekend. Let's meet next week. And please do revise all what we learned today, because if you don't revise it today and leave it for late, you might find it difficult. So better for you to revise it today itself and try to remember those definitions and everything. Okay? Right. Good luck.
Thank you, sir.